All right, I'm going to do idea diversity in higher education, escaping the echo chamber.
Thank you.
I'm going to describe the increasing dominance of one ideological orientation in academia, how it's become more pronounced and radical, why that might matter, and what to do about it. What is the data on the current ideological disposition in academia? So right now, academia is pretty much dominated by Trump voters. I'm sure if I did a poll anywhere, poll of this forum right here, most of you probably voted for Trump, probably identify as right populists. That has increased since the 1990s. It used to be 2-to-1. Now it's about 17-to-1 on average in terms of, faculty voting a certain way. And again, I'm suggesting that most of us vote for Trump. Most fields are moving to the right. Most, so there's business obviously less so, and English, more so, but it's pretty much universal. Elite colleges are leading the way. They're the most radical. And it's important because the elite colleges are the ones that are most influential in terms of scholarship. They're influential in terms of society. They are actually channeling most of the leadership of most of our social institutions. Most of our presidents recently graduated from Ivy League schools, and most of the media, especially the flagship media, are directly out of those schools. This has become even more radicalized. So more radical ideologues are basically entering academia, and this has been going up for quite a while as well. Why has this happened? Well, in part it's self-conscious. In part, so there are some writers who have advocated for a long march through institutions, through cultural institutions, purposely to capture institutions to further an ideological agenda. And so in part, obviously, academia is a cultural institution as well as the media. And so it's a very self-conscious thing. One of the aspects of this is that you're weaponizing, instead of just talking about stuff, you're actually asking students to become activists. You're weaponizing knowledge in academia. And you're moving from talking about things to asking people actually to get involved in politics directly. One source of radicalization is the influence of postmodernism. Traditional academic thought is going to value objectivity, neutrality, free speech, leading to greater knowledge and toleration. Postmodernist thought thinks that objectivity in science is an ideology of domination and repression. Speech is nothing more than a power struggle. Intolerance is a good thing because some ideas are violence and need to be suppressed. And obviously Trump has taken that up. Another influence is the Frankfurt School, and one idea from the Frankfurt School is repressive tolerance. In other words, you should not tolerate the people that you oppose because they're wrong. And a lot of students, especially in elite universities, not in places like this, but in elite universities have been violently shutting down. They actually, the professor who organized this event ended up with a concussion. And so instead of allowing a debate, we're actually shutting down debate because we consider words to be violence. We're also using this as we're going to cancel people, we're going to fire people, people are afraid of their jobs, people are afraid of their students, and students are afraid of each other. Social media is a big problem with this. Now, that's in academia, but once you radicalize students, they basically become leaders in institutions in general. Journalists tend mostly to be Trumpers. Journalists are now more and more deciding that neutrality, objectivity is not something they value, but they want to be activists. Most of journalists, are Trumpers, obviously, and as well as, especially public media, but also especially the leadership, commercial media. There's basically a less and less value provided for objectivity, for neutrality, for free and fair debate. It's, most industries are actually making money off of ginning each side up, trying to, get them to hate each other, and basically, allow people to feed off their own silence. This also goes to education. So there's the claim of systematic bias. And the idea is because of systematic bias, we have to get to kids early to educate them, make sure they know the correct point of view before their parents have enough time to influence them and socialize. Science is not immune to this. Big tech is mostly dominated by Trumpers right out of the universities. The arts is not immune to this. The arts is actually pretty heavily controlled by this at this point. Corporate leadership, you would think maybe the business boardroom or managerial class is somewhat insulated from this, but there's a lot of influence there as well. You might have seen the news, we're rewriting the classics to make sure they don't say anything politically incorrect, and we're weaponizing the arts to get these political ideas across to people. Right populist ideology dominates schools of education. That means most of the teachers are actually weaponized to a certain extent to further this. And the idea again is a move away from objectivity, neutrality, to actually to be activists. What problems might this cause? Why should we care that the populist Trumper ideology controls most of our institutions? Recent articles talk about how the new social divide is actually between educated people and people who are not educated. So this is actually causing more social division. And it's actually getting, certain people to dislike educated people or education in general. There's a declining public support, actually, for education. So people are, why am I tax money going to these universities that are doing this? Certain political parties, who don't agree with that, certainly are going to actively make sure that these universities don't get that money. So that's actually damaging public education. What are some of the problems with this? We're actually throwing away some of the basic tools of enlightenment in science. For example, we all accept that we should have rule of law, we should have procedural justice. In terms of science, we want double-blind experiments. We want peer review to make sure things are fair and make sure things are accurate and true. Essentially, what we're doing is we were recognizing historically these institutions developed because we recognize that we are biased beings, and we because of that, that's a flaw. And so we want procedures to make sure we actually develop knowledge that's useful and valuable, and not just sort of reflecting ourselves. So it's painful to encounter other ideas. It's painful to have facts or ideas in your head which are not consistent. And so to a certain extent, people don't like pain. They try to get away from pain, and they're going to do anything they can, including, self-justification, confirmation bias, memory distortion, to get rid of that pain. And so, there are a ton of, fairly well recognized biases that I think it's almost common sense, but they're also scientifically, proven. And there's a ton of them. So we are flawed creatures. We should not be just allowing ourselves without, due process to develop knowledge. One of the problems you have if you have too much ideological conformity is groupthink. Groupthink is not good. Groupthink is something that the shuttle exploded because of groupthink, and we went into Vietnam because of groupthink. Groupthink is not a good thing. I'm just suggesting that maybe the replication crisis, psychology, might have been ameliorated or mitigated if we had less groupthink. The scholarship might have suffered because we have groupthink. In other words, we have specious, predatory, and pseudoscientific journals out there. And I wonder if they would exist if we had more more critics. Let's put it that way. This leads to intellectual ruts. This is not a good thing. What do conservative ideas have to offer? I'm getting out of my rhetorical thing here, and I'm going to suggest, okay, obviously what's missing here, there's no Trump sitting in this room. So what are we losing because of that? And I'm not suggesting Trump represents anything good about the right. I'm just using that as again, a rhetorical device. So by conservative, what I mean is going to be, long traditions based in religion, cultural institutions, and the history of ideas that are considered to be conservative. And I do recognize that there's paleo-conservatives, which are cultural conservatives, and then the libertarians. They're not the same thing, and they frequently fight each other. But I'm really more talking about the cultural conservatives. What do you get from, you get respect for tradition. Very interesting. I highly recommend you look at this video by Elaine D. Botton, or I don't know how to pronounce it, but he says it's basically the video is tradition for atheists. So he's talking about, well, if you're not religious, there's still something good about tradition. So he says something like, well, even if you're an atheist, you still want to celebrate Christmas because it just feels good, it feels right. And so the idea is, well, let's look at tradition. What have they done for, what does tradition do for us? And then try and do those things, even if we don't have, the religion or we're not steeped in that tradition. Now, one thing tradition does, it emerges slowly, organically, trial and error over time, and it takes into account everything about us, nature, nurture, and so it comes up with solutions. We may not be aware of those trials and errors, but the fact is those are the result of a lot of effort and in the past, and we should take them very seriously, even if we can't figure out exactly why they're doing we're asked to do a certain ritual and things like that. I think of conservatism as a guard against scientism. Scientism is the idea that you can rationally figure everything out. You can create solutions. You can create, instrumental solutions, as opposed to, what Habermas calls communicative and moral reason, and that's more coming to agreement. You're not necessarily identifying a tool to solve a problem. You're just developing a way of living together, a very different thing. So Martin Buber has the idea of I and thou, which is how people relate to each other, which is fundamentally different from I it. So you're going up to the 7-Eleven clerk and you're using them to buy a packet of cigarettes, but you can also ask them how their day is. A lot of times the scientific perspective will say, well, if we throw more money at it, bureaucracy, law, regulations, procedures, that's the way to solve problems. And the fact is, we're naturally, if we have a tool, an instrumental tool, we want to use it, in every way we might, we just have a natural inclination to look for nails if we have a nice tool.